Welcome to Encounter, where we celebrate putting faith into action and community leaders who live out compassion, grace, and love. We're a program of the Broome County Council of Churches that addresses food insecurity through CHOW and the Greater Good Grocery, provides hospital and jail ministry, builds wheelchair ramps, and assists neighbors with transportation and shopping services through Faith in Action volunteers. We invite you to the conversation. Encounter your neighbors as we learn to walk together in love and kindness.
Good morning and welcome to Encounter. A lot goes into making a community a community. One of the things that I love about Binghamton are the arts and the arts organizations that run, that'll really enrich our lives in Binghamton and give us a sense of depth and perception that culture is important. And one of those organizations in our community, and I love this organization, by the way, is the Binghamton Philharmonic. Our guests today are Paul Cienniwa, who is the executive director of the Philharmonic, as well as Julia Grella O'Connell. And I think you are curriculum development or some kind of, what is your title?
My title is Director of Education and Community Engagement.
Director of Education and Community Engagement. That's a long title, but
yeah.
It's great to have you both on Encounter.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming on. So Paul, let's start off with you. How did you come to Binghamton? And I know that you've been here for a number of years, but how did you? Tell me a little bit about how one becomes an executive director of a Philharmonic.
Well, my background is as a professional musician, and a lot of that work was in churches. In fact, I was a church musician for over 30 years, I think. Along with playing with symphony orchestras and playing recitals, my main instrument is harpsichord. A lot of recitals and concerts with that instrument, but I also am an organist and choir director. I was chorus master of the New Bedford Symphony in Massachusetts, and I played with Rhode Island Philharmonic. And all this time I was working as a church musician. In 2017, I went down to South Florida to work in a large Episcopal church. And like all of my church positions, there were concert series as a part of that. And this church had a chamber music series in its 30th year at the time. And so it was a big part of that position. Florida didn't agree with my wife and me. As I like to say, it took her a week to dislike Florida. It took me about a year. And then we were looking to move back to New England, where she was from. And as I was applying for positions, I saw this position in Binghamton, and I'd already been looking into orchestral management because of my background, not only as a musician and orchestral musician, but also as an organizer as a chorus master, and also in my concert series experience. So this was one of the career options I was looking into. And in fact, I ignored Binghamton at first until my brother said, well, New York is right next to New England. And the rest is history. I interviewed for the job in February of 2020. It happened in April of 2020. So I became the executive director who carried the Philharmonic through the pandemic.
Yeah.
And now it's almost 5 years later since I arrived. And
it's hard to believe that was 5 years ago, isn't it?
I'm glad it's already far in the rearview mirror. It was a very trying time.
Yes,
But it was also a time to reassess the Philharmonic and to look at our past practices and make good decisions going forward. And I'm very happy to say that we are a healthy and successful organization right now. Our subscription and ticket sales are, right now we're 14% above where we expected to be at this time. So it's been a really good season, and we're seeing increased numbers each year.
Great. Now, Julia, how did you become? Tell us a little bit about your background.
So it's sort of a long and winding road. But I actually started as an opera singer. I ended up going back to graduate school because I really fell in love with doing research. At a certain point, I had become very entranced with little known and little performed vocal repertoires. And so I thought, okay, I want to do something different. How do I learn to do research? So I went back to graduate school and I really fell in love with research. And I sort of started transitioning out of performance and into doing music historical research. And I was always interested in sort of uncovering, let's say, forgotten connections or connections between music and other events that had been just sort of obliterated by history. And so I ended up writing a book about British music in the 19th century. The performing that I was still doing was very sort of scholarly, informed performance, lecture recitals on sort of, kind of unusual topics. And so then I began teaching, and I shifted really fully out of performance and into teaching. I moved here to Binghamton with my family in 2008 for my husband's job. And I began teaching at SUNY Broome Community College. I taught there for 9 years. And while there, I created the college's first and only course in African American music history, called From Spirituals to Hip Hop, American Music of the African Diaspora. And my interest in the confluence between classical music and Black American music really started when I was back in graduate school, and this was in New York City at the Graduate Center of the City University of New York. And it came out of my own teaching in the City University system. I taught at Hunter College and City College of New York, and while there, I applied for and won a grant from my department's diversity committee to create a one-on-one tutorial for a gifted student of color. In other words, this was targeted towards students who were historically marginalized from the discipline of historic musicology, academic music studies. And so I created this tutorial for a gifted Black woman student. It was amazing. And she ended up switching her major from English to musicology. So perhaps I succeeded, perhaps I failed, because I attracted someone to musicology. But so anyway, that sort of started my passionate investment in the idea that classical music repertoires are for everybody.
Right. And that's led that passion that Julia is talking about has led itself toward something that's coming up this week, I think, where we're talking about African American composers. So Paul, do you want to give us some background on
Sure.
on that?
When I first met Julia, or it was before you were working for the Philharmonic, we talked about a program that would focus on music by African American composers. And then eventually Julia started working for us, and this led to the creation of a program that we are presenting twice for regional schools, and it's called Classically Black, Great Music of African American Composers. That's your title, and it's a great title. The program invites children from around the region. We have a large contingent from our local schools, Binghamton, Johnson City, Vestal, and then going far out as Ithaca, Oxford, and so on, bringing up to 3,000 students between two performances into the Broome County Forum Theater. So it's a program that makes its way through a number of composers. We have a narrator, and images of the composers. We've also partnered with Binghamton University Art Museum. You can see one of the images on the screen from their collection of music by African American artists. And they will be bringing works to the Forum Theater in the lobby as sort of the pre-show. They've also partnered with us, and specifically Julia, to create these very beautiful lesson plans that we are sharing with schools, so that when schools come and the students come, the teachers have been able to tell them a little bit about what they will hear and what they will see at the performance. This event is on the last day of Black History Month, so we have worked with the schools to make this part of their curriculum. When we at first presented this to the schools, many of the principals said, "Oh, I'll send this over to our music teacher. This is for our music classes." We said, "No, I mean, that's good,
Right.
but this is a social studies. This is general studies. This is civic engagement. This is about. It should be part of any school's Black History Month curriculum, and frankly, not just Black History Month, but part of their curriculum, because the music. This is American history. It's not just music history. It's not just classical music. This is American history and needs to be taught. It's very important. Well, I'll let Julia talk a little bit more about the program and how representation matters.
Absolutely. Yes. So I have a lot to say about this program, so you might need to shut me up. But I also, I want to reiterate the wonderful collaboration that I've been able to do with the Binghamton University Art Museum with the Art Museum's education coordinator, Amanda Lynn. Her name is Amanda Lynn, not the instrument.
Mandolin.
Yes. But anyway, so she and I, Amanda and I, wrote these lesson plans together. And my real aim for these lesson plans, as Paul suggested, was not that they are standalone music lessons. That's not what they are. The lesson plans that I created with Amanda push into the general education curriculum. They illuminate American literature. They illuminate American history. They illuminate civic engagement. And I made sure that I included a wide variety of interdisciplinary activities and bibliographies for further reading. And I know it sounds very like graduate student-ish, but the fact is that these lesson plans are for students in grades 4 through 12. And I suggested extension activities so that they could be extended to even younger grades. So at any rate, I hope that, as Paul mentioned, that they will be, that teachers will feel free and welcome to use them to prepare students to enjoy this concert to the fullest. And one of the things that I really strove to do with this concert and with the lesson plans was to connect, these are not random pieces of music. All music, let me put it this way, music history is human history. Black music is American music.
Right.
And so the pieces that the Philharmonic is doing for our concert Classically Black, these pieces will be repeated the following evening in the concert for the general public, which is Pops at the Forum, a tribute to the American spirit. And I think that the representation of great music by Black composers in a concert called A Tribute to the American Spirit tells you all you need to know. That Black music, and I'm talking about Black classical music as well, it stands in the mainstream of history and in the mainstream of classical music. So every piece that is going to be performed on the children's program, Classically Black, and every work of art that the Binghamton University so generously made available to us, every work of art and every piece of music speaks to a certain period in American history, and in Black American history specifically. So for instance, we have combined a piece by Duke Ellington, rather two pieces by Duke Ellington, with the image that you see here on the cover of the lesson plans, which is an image by the great Black artist Jacob Lawrence, artist of the Harlem Renaissance, and this piece is called Memorabilia. So we are using the Jacob Lawrence painting and the Duke Ellington music to speak to the period of the Harlem Renaissance, which was a time of great enthusiasm about Black contributions to American culture. So the lesson plans speak to the whole context of the Harlem Renaissance, and so on. That's just one of the 4 composers. And the other 3 do this as well. So we have composer plus artwork, and the composer and the artwork are shining a bright light on certain historical periods in American history, and more specifically Black American history. So it's very exciting.
So my guests today are Julia Grella O'Connell and Paul Cienniwa, and we've been talking about their Classically Black program that is coming up this weekend, where they're going to be presenting it to school districts in our area, as well as in the POPs rendition over the weekend. So thank you for being on and for informing us about this. So Paul, when you think about what are some of the outcomes that you hope as a Philharmonic will come out of this not only from the perspective of the Philharmonic itself, like you're obviously putting on some amazing, you're highlighting some amazing art and some amazing symphonies that have been composed by African Americans. But what is as far as like a bridge that you would hope that you would create with the community itself? Like what is that outcome?
Well, first, I always give this caveat to people that I'm not entirely altruistic.
Right.
This is about audience building.
Right.
But not just audience building. This is about civic engagement. This is about letting our community, and I mean all of the community, know that they are welcome in one of Binghamton's great civic spaces, the Broome County Forum Theater. It is the people's theater. So by creating programs in which people can see themselves, we create better audience engagement. So yeah, as executive director, I like the bottom line. But we're building future audience as well. And if our future audience does not see themselves in what we are doing, then that is a tragedy. So bringing everyone to the table to share in this great musical legacy that we have is part of this program.
But do you think that it does help dispel certain prejudices that we may be carrying with us as a when Julia, when Julia was talking, she indicated that all music is black music.
All American
All
music.
American music is black music, and so in a way so hip hop is not the only African American expression of music, or you have like rap music not being the only African American expression of music, but that most music has its place within the African American experience. Is that correct? Or?
Sure.
Yeah. So
well, yeah, and I guess prejudice is a good word, although it may not be apparent but people who may think that the symphonic tradition is a Western European tradition.
Right.
It most certainly isn't, and a Western European dead white man's tradition. The Philharmonic for years has always tried to present, particularly on its symphonic series, at least one work of an underrepresented composer. This year we've had several female composers. Last year, composers of different ethnic backgrounds and so on. And part of that comes out of our music director, who may be, as far as we know, the only Native American or conductor with Native American ancestry leading a symphony orchestra. So Daniel Heggie, our music director, this idea of showing underrepresented groups in what we program is very important. And it's not just a nice thing. It's not a checkbox. It's also very practical.
Right.
We want to engage new audiences, and we want to engage our current audiences. And if we are not relevant to either,
right,
then we are dead. So it is important that we show the wide range of expression and to show who is involved in this expression of writing and performing with symphony orchestras.
And Julia, how does that match up with some of the outcomes that you're kind of looking for from the curriculum itself?
Yeah, this is a great question. So for me, I have always been extremely concerned as an educator about teaching for equity. And I have come very firmly to believe that equal access to the great heritage of our shared culture is the only way to do that. I feel that it's a tragedy when the humanities, when the cultural expressions of the world are segmented. And I fear that that's been done too much in the past 10, 20, 30 years. That I fear that, that students have been segmented in terms of teaching and in terms of preparation. And that to me is the wrong way to go. All students, for instance, in my opinion, all students need to read Shakespeare. All students need to know the music of Beethoven. We're talking about some of the greatest cultural expressions of human history. And these cultural expressions belong to everybody. I just want to tell a little story that, for me, this is why I do what I do. So in 1892, the great composer Antonin Dvorak, you know, the New World Symphony, great Austro-Hungarian composer from the now Czech Republic, was invited to come to America to head a short-lived enterprise called the National Conservatory. And by the way, the National Conservatory was endowed by a wealthy heiress from Delhi, New York.
Oh, wow.
Her name
Right
was,
down the road.
Exactly. So a local connection. So anyway, the idea was that here we are, we're a young nation, and we need to have our own music. So we don't know how to do this, so we're gonna hire this great famous European composer to come and teach us. Dvorak comes, he comes to America. He hires immediately, his assistant is a black composer, a young black composer. His assistant, Henry Thackeray Burleigh, sings spirituals for Dvorak. Dvorak is like, this is it. Dvorak gives a famous interview to the International Herald Tribune in which he says, people, Americans, you have it already.
Yeah.
You have everything you need in black music. This is it. This is it. You don't need me. This is what you need. These songs, these spirituals have everything in them. And so he teaches black students, he teaches women students. This is, you know, hugely revolutionary in the 1890s. And he writes his famous New World Symphony based on Negro spirituals, as they were called at the time, based on American Indian music, as it was called at the time, which he was exposed to when he took a trip to this Czech community, Spillville, Iowa, during the summers. And so basically, he is showing America, here it is. You have black music, you have Native American music. This is your music. This will provide the basis for a robust classical musical style. And so after he left and went back to Europe, this is what composers did. Black composers, white composers, this is our music. And so Europe influenced by America, America influenced by Europe. It's like the snake biting its tail. This music is for all of us. This music is for all children of America everywhere, and I want them to know that.
Well, this is an amazing conversation that we're having right now, because I think in a lot of ways, you know, we do have the breaking down, you know, for want of a better word, of the prejudice that around African American music and what constitutes African American music, but also the idea that the Philharmonic itself is part of that story. That there's something within the Philharmonic which is not just for dead white men, but it's also something
Absolutely.
for that's filled with a richness of heritage and a richness of diversity even within it.
Yes.
So you know, so you are going to be having some African American students coming to the forum, and they're going to be sitting there listening to this music being played. And many of them, and I know many of their parents, they have kids that are in the symphony at school. They have folks who are in band, and when they're listening to the orchestra play, What do you hope that child will experience, Paul?
I hope that all of these children understand that this is theirs. This is their legacy. This is their city, that they can come downtown and hear this right in their backyard. I've heard teachers say that in some areas of Binghamton, people don't really leave their 4-block area.
Right.
That's not good civic engagement. We want we are about creating great citizens, and we all should be. And so I hope that these children who come to the theater see themselves in the music, whether black, white, pink, whatever color, but that they can see themselves in the music, but also just experience the sonic, incredible beauty of a symphony orchestra. But it's, we're not just trying to turn out great audience members. This is also just about creating a better society. And we can do that in that space. And that, if we can get a percentage of our kids, or all of them, well, all of them would be a dream, but to feel enfranchised to what this community can offer them, I think that is a great thing.
Now, in our last minute and a half, what are some of the things that you would like to, like how, if people want to get connected with what's going on with the Philharmonic, what are ways that they can find out a little bit about your season and that kind of thing?
Well, our website's the best place, binghamtonphilharmonic.org. And you can see what's coming up. We also have many of our concerts, 8 of them are at the Broome County Forum Theater. We also have chamber music concerts at the Phelps Mansion Museum. These are much more intimate, 120-seat room, a great way to be up and close with musicians. Our Forum Theater concerts now, for our 3rd year, kids 17 and under can attend for free.
Wow.
So that is effectively a half-price ticket for parents. And we often provide free seat upgrades for newcomers and so on. But it's the free kids tickets is great. We get teenagers who call us up and want tickets, and their parents don't need to be there. And talk about civic engagement. But the idea, when we'll have a teenager call up and say, I want a ticket for my sister and my brother, and we're all coming. I'm like, hey, parents, this is great babysitting. Send the kids out to the Philharmonic. Our audience loves seeing the young people, and in the audience, and since we started doing this, there is a huge demographic shift in who is attending our concerts. We're getting young families. Our older patrons love it because it brings down that median age. It's great. We have a mix of pops and symphonic concerts. March 1st is our Pops at the Forum tribute to the American Spirit. All of the music from our school program will be on there, but also music from Rodgers and Hammerstein and some movie music and so on. We really mix it up for those Pops concerts. We have a symphonic concert with the great pianist Andrew Russo at the end of March, playing Rachmaninoff Third Piano Concerto. One of the greats. So it goes on. It's
we're really grateful for that and for you being on Encounter. Thanks for being on today.
Thank
and
you
for all of
having
you, I
us.
pray that you would be good and kind to each other.